Star Wars is one of the most turbulent film franchises of all time. 3 trilogies, 9 movies, everyone has different opinions on them, but you cannot deny the impact it has put in cinema. It also jump-started the careers of Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Natalie Portman, Ewan McGregor, James Earl Jones, and many more. Star Wars came from the mind of course, George Lucas, who directed A New Hope and the Prequel Trilogy. He was also the producer of all 6 films in the original saga. This film series first came to an end in 1983 with The Return of the Jedi, and then the Prequel Trilogy started in 1999. At that time, the saga ended in 2005 with Revenge of the Sith, but on October 30th, 2012, it was announced that Disney bought Lucasfilms. This included the rights of Star Wars and Indiana Jones for $4 billion. Immediately after the purchase, Disney went ahead and greenlit and started developing the sequel trilogy to Star Wars, starting with, of course, Star Wars The Force Awakens. Since its acquisition, there has been 3 films in the sequel trilogy, 2 spin-off films, and numerous Disney Plus shows. Today marks the 10-year and 1 day since the acquisition was announced. And has Star Wars, the brand, the film franchise, been beneficial with Disney? Let's talk about that. But before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel right down there so you don't miss out on the releases of our future movies and short films, as well as videos of me talking about movies and stuff. Also, make sure you watch our award-winning second feature-length film, The Hollywood Dream. You can click right there to watch it right now. But yeah, let's get started. Let's talk about George Lucas. Now, it's no secret that this man wanted to create a sequel trilogy. He had a bunch of ideas for a sequel trilogy. The ideas that George Lucas has is some of the stuff that Disney implemented in the actual sequel trilogy. For example, the original cast members of the original trilogy being in the later part of their lives, being older. The film following 3 younger people, which kind of makes sense. Different trilogies, different stories, different main characters, makes sense. But George Lucas wanted to delve more into the Force, more into the mystical aspect of the trilogy. And yeah, George Lucas, with each trilogy, with his 2 trilogies, delved into different aspects of that. Like the original trilogy was more about the Vietnam War and the U.S. in the Vietnam War. If you're going to tell, the U.S. were the Empire in George's Star Wars. And the prequel trilogy was about politics. So George Lucas would have implemented more real-life stuff in the sequel trilogy, kind of like a commentary on society. But George Lucas felt like his time was up. He wanted to spend more time with his family, more time with his kids. So Lucas decided it would be best to give the franchise to someone new, someone fresh, someone that he can trust, which was Kathleen Kennedy. She was promoted once the Disney acquisition was finalized. She became the head producer of the Star Wars, as well as, Indiana Jones. So yeah, she was the lady in charge. And she's not some newbie. She's been in the film industry for the longest time. She knows how to do her job, and she knows how to do it well. Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars movies, all of her projects have been moneymakers. All of their projects have been well received for the most part. So Kathleen Kennedy knew what to do, knew which direction Star Wars should go. Some can criticize her for her leadership being more about revenue and profits, but this is Hollywood. Hollywood is about making money. That's the truth of it all. You know what I mean? So, with Kathleen Kennedy in charge, let's talk about The Force Awakens. Now, my personal opinion of The Force Awakens, I think is just a modern-day remake of A New Hope. That's honestly my opinion. But I'm in the minority here. A lot of people love The Force Awakens. A lot of people watched The Force Awakens and fell back in love with Star Wars because the prequel trilogy left a lot of bad taste in people's mouths. So, The Force Awakens was a breath of fresh air. Star Wars is back. J.J. Abrams was a big fan of the original trilogy and how the original trilogy was made. The Force Awakens implemented a lot of practical effects, a lot of story beats from the original Star Wars movie in 1977. Rian Johnson came in and directed the second film in the trilogy, The Last Jedi, and in my opinion, I like The Last Jedi the most because it is a more different approach to Star Wars, a different storyline. Everything felt new. But once again, I am in the minority here because a lot of people felt like this isn't Star Wars. They did not handle Luke Skywalker well. It felt out of character for him to give up on hope. And I agree with that aspect. I think Luke Skywalker was not the same Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi. Rian Johnson could have had, his version of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi had The Force Awakens developed Luke Skywalker more. You know what I mean? Remember what I just said, because this will come in after I talk about the last film in the trilogy. But in my opinion, The Last Jedi, once again, great music, great score, also great cinematography. This film, or The Rise of Skywalker, or The Empire Strikes Back, those three films, one of those three could take the cake as the best well-shot film in the Star Wars films. And the performances were top-notch too. Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Poe Dameron, Oscar Isaac, and Adam Driver, they all performed really, really well in this movie. And the shocking twist of Snoke dying was very well done. But in retrospect, The Rise of Skywalker should have pulled the trigger on Adam Driver, Kylo Ren as the Supreme Leader. That would have been amazing, but we'll get into that. But yeah, overall, The Last Jedi really, really divided the fans. And it made everyone in Lucasfilm panicked. Like, everyone was panicking what to do next with the third film in the trilogy. The Rise of Skywalker. A lot of people, including myself, don't really like this film. It's not really a satisfying conclusion to, essentially, the 9 films that led up to this moment. A lot of it had to do with the mixed storytelling beats. You know what I mean? Like, The Rise of Skywalker had to clean up the loose ends of The Last Jedi and continue the storyline from The Force Awakens that was not continued in The Last Jedi. And on top of that, they played it pretty safe with most of the stuff. Like, it felt very generic as a movie. But, Lando coming back was always a nice welcome to see. Carrie Fisher's death, first of all, Princess Leia and Carrie Fisher, that was always going to be a tough thing to do with The Rise of Skywalker because Carrie Fisher died in 2016. So it was hard to deal with that. How do we manage that in The Rise of Skywalker? With what they were given, I think they did a pretty good job with Princess Leia in the last movie. Of course, her lines and scenes were very one-liney and generic, you know what I mean? Because, that's what they had to do, honestly. But her death was very, very emotional. I'm not going to lie about that. The Rise of Skywalker also revealing that Rey is a Palpatine. They should have just kept her as a nobody. That would have been a much better story and a much more optimistic, welcoming theme. The theme being, anyone that is anyone can be a hero. You don't have to be connected to a lineage. You don't have to be connected to a Skywalker, a Kenobi, or a Palpatine to save the galaxy. You could be a nobody. That was what I liked about The Last Jedi and the final scene in The Last Jedi. Something that The Rise of Skywalker said, no, you have to be a Skywalker or a Palpatine or a Kenobi or anyone to do anything. Sucks there, but whatever. So you can kind of see what I'm trying to illustrate, whereas that they didn't plan the sequel trilogy well at all. And that's because of the hype of the sequel trilogy. Like, Disney announced the Force Awakens right when the acquisition was announced too. So they went into overdrive trying to get this trilogy out. And the sacrifice they made was a cohesive story. If you watch all 3 films, it's turbulent. It doesn't make any sense. You will get whiplash from watching these movies. They start a storyline, then end it, then start a new one, then end it, then this storyline doesn't get a conclusion, this storyline doesn't get a beginning. It makes no sense. They should have had someone like George Lucas, someone that wrote all 3 films. Someone that said, no, this is how the story's going to be. This is this character's arc. This is this character's arc. This is this is that. And we'll have twists right here. We'll have a twist right there. We'll have some new things to play around with right there. But they chose not to do that. The people behind these movies, listen, respect to them for making these movies. They're talented people, but they were just not utilized the best that they can be. It kind of felt like this. They made The Rise of Skywalker based off of the backlash of The Last Jedi. And they made The Last Jedi based off the backlash of The Force Awakens. And they made The Force Awakens based off the backlash of Revenge of the Sith. Instead of trying to tell a cohesive story, they tried to please the people that weren't pleased with the previous installment. And that was the problem with the sequel trilogy. I'm not going to blame anyone. I'm not going to blame Kathleen Kennedy. I'm not going to blame Disney. I'm not going to blame the directors. No one is to blame for this. It's just a mistake that everyone collectively made. And it's a mistake that Disney and Lucasfilm is learning from. let's talk about the spin-off movies. So, what they did with the spin-off movies is what I feel like is what Lucasfilm and Disney should have done instead of doing a sequel trilogy. Or, this is what they should have started off with first while setting up and finalizing a 3-movie script for the trilogy. You know what I mean? Rogue One, for example. A really cool movie. It is a different style in Star Wars, a different type of story. It's a military movie, and you know Hollywood loves military movies. So, it is a really cool Star Wars military movie. It's more about the rebels, no Jedi, no Sith, none of that bullcrap. It's just the rebels trying to get the Death Star plans and dying trying to do it. I love that movie. Yeah, I mean, there's no charm, there's not really that much fun in this movie, unlike, the other Star Wars movies, but it's a military movie. It's not supposed to be fun. You're trying to tell me you watch Saving Private Ryan for the fun of it? Hell nah. If you want fun, let's talk about Solo, a Star Wars movie. Now, this movie is more of a Western comedy type of movie. That's what they try to go with, and I'm gonna be honest, I only watched this once when it came out in theaters. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying the movie is bad. I'm just saying it wasn't for me personally, but I appreciate what they tried to do with this movie. Also, this Han Solo movie was meant to start a trilogy of Han Solo movies, but as far as I know, that's canceled. I could be wrong about that, but the first Han Solo movie, it's all about Han Solo and Chewbacca meeting some other smugglers, doing some smuggler things, and yeah, that's the point of the movie. It's not supposed to impact the Star Wars timeline at all. It's a movie that's meant to be fun to watch. Also, Donald Glover as Lando. But, those 2 spin-off films came out right before Rise of Skywalker. And the Rise of Skywalker pretty much damaged the Star Wars branding. Everyone got sick of Star Wars during this time. So Disney, as of right now, is more focused on Disney Plus originals. The Mandalorian, the first season came out in 2019. The Obi Wan Kenobi show, a lot of hype for that. And some people don't really like it. Other people really love it. But yeah, it was nice to see Ewan McGregor back as Obi Wan Kenobi in a show like this. Also, fan favorite Boba Fett. He had his own show. There's a lot of criticisms of that. But one thing I really like about the book of Boba Fett is that Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka finally met. And they had a brief moment talking about Anakin. That's always the fan in me came out in that. Oh, and of course, the Clone Wars Season 7 finally came out. I always loved watching the Clone Wars show when it was on TV. And when it abruptly got canceled, I was very disappointed. I think, the animators and Dave Filoni? No. I'm blanking here, but Dave and his team was really passionate about the Clone Wars series. I'm so happy they finally got to write an ending, premiere the ending of the Clone Wars show. And that ending was very, very good and very emotional. But I loved it. It was very, very good. And, stemming off of Rogue One, there's the Andor show that's airing. And yeah, that's also a more military show, a more realistic, grounded Star Wars show. So yeah, there's no Jedis, there's no Sith. There's also no fan service in the show. It's meant to be a pure story about Andor. Am I saying his name right? Andor? The show is called Andor, but it's Andor? I don't know, but I love the show. I love the approach they went with that. And of course, coming up is the Ahsoka show. So you can clearly see Lucasfilm is trying to go in a different direction with the Star Wars franchise and trying to tell stories with different characters. Because let's be real, 9 films over the past, 50 years of the same, centered around the same characters or same group of characters does get pretty stale, does get pretty boring. The audiences at some point will get sick of it. So I'm glad Star Wars and Lucasfilms is finally going in a direction that's more outside of the timeline, more about different characters and their struggles. Because let's be real, the world that George Lucas and everyone involved with Star Wars created is so vast, is so open that there is so many stories to tell. There's a lot of different opportunities to tell different types of stories in the Star Wars world. I say world, more of the Star Wars intergalactic space, because it's different planets, different galaxies they all go through, so yeah, there's that. So yeah, overall, in the last 10 years, the Star Wars branding kind of went up, then down, then up, then down, now slowly trying to get back up, so there's a bunch of steps and missteps, a bunch of stuff that they went through, but I think right now, they're climbing back up and trying to find a more stable ground to be on. The Disney Plus shows have been proving to be better to do. There's a lot of Star Wars movies that's about to come out. As far as I know, they're not related to the Skywalker timeline, as far as we all know. Yeah, I think Star Wars is best right now telling different stories, going in different directions. So yeah, honestly speaking, I prefer Disney buying Lucasfilm. Yes, Disney's becoming a monopoly. I don't know if I'm even legally allowed to say that, but Disney allegedly is turning into a monopoly. I'm just going to say that just for my own safety. So yeah, that is not good, but they're providing content for the fans. So that's always good, I guess. To wrap it all up, in the 10 years, the sequel trilogy was mishandled, unfortunately. But Disney, Lucasfilms, is going on a redemption arc, putting out some really good original Disney Plus shows. If they ever go back to the spin-offs, that would also be very promising. But, just delving into different stories, different characters, different places in the galaxy would be very beneficial for the Star Wars brand, and I'm really loving it. And yeah, who knows, maybe in like 10, 20 years, we'll get another trilogy in the Skywalker timeline, and hopefully they learn from their mistakes of the sequel trilogy and actually sit down, plan out the 3 movies, and then pull the trigger on a new trilogy. I would love to see another trilogy. I'm not going to lie. I would love to see it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Hopefully I don't get destroyed in the comments for liking The Last Jedi, hating The Force Awakens, and wishing for another trilogy in the Skywalker saga. Controversial takes, but I'm going to keep it in the video. I'm not going to take it back.